Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a concept from Happywise called our conscious narrative. We're going to see how the stories quietly running in the background of our minds are literally shaping who we are, as leaders, professionals, and, well, just as human beings. Why do I do what I do? It's a huge question, right? We all ask it. But here's the thing. The answer you give yourself isn't just a dry list of facts. It's always a story. And the clarity, the authenticity, and even the struggles in that story, they completely dictate the quality of your relationships and your leadership. So a conscious narrative is all about actively building and sharing these stories with total honesty. Now, Dan McAdams from Northwestern University has this amazing concept called narrative identity. Basically, the idea is that we build our identity like a continuous personal story that connects our past, present, and future. And as he puts it, we are just custodians of past stories. We're the authors of stories in progress. That means your narrative, it's not locked in. You have total agency to deliberately rewrite it just by shifting how you interpret the facts of your own life. But to actually use that agency, we have to recognize the patterns we fall into. Usually, it's one of two. The first is what we call stories of contamination. This is where positive events get ruined by negative ones, and difficulties are seen as these super annoying interruptions. But the alternative is so much better. Stories of redemption. In these stories, the negative stuff eventually sparks something better. Difficulties aren't interruptions anymore, they're actually integrated into the plot as the very catalysts for your growth. As researcher Jonathan Gottschall points out, our brains are basically story-making machines. They crave coherence, they want simple, stable narratives, even if those narratives are actually holding us back. Think about a thought like, I'm just not suited for this. That completely limits your growth, right? It draws a permanent line in the sand. We have to actively flip that into an enabling story. Something like, okay, I haven't developed this skill enough yet. That one little word leaves the door wide open for you to evolve. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. Conscious storytelling isn't just about talking. It's massively about listening. Yuri Hassan at Princeton documented this wild biological phenomenon called neural coupling. He found that when someone is telling an authentic story, the listener's brain physically synchronizes with the storyteller's brain. Literally, it's a biological resonance. So when you truly listen to your team, you're building a profound, hardwired connection to their lived experiences. You definitely can't get that from a simple employee survey. And the crazy part? The listener isn't the only one being transformed. James Pennebaker discovered that the simple act of sharing a meaningful experience with someone who is truly listening produces measurable biological health benefits. We're talking tangible drops in stress, lower cortisol levels, better emotional regulation, and sharper cognitive clarity. You're actually healing and organizing your own brain just through conscious narration. So what does this actually look like in the workplace? Well, leaders communicate their core values through the stories they choose to tell. There was this massive 75-year Harvard study by George Valiant, and it proved that the most mature, effective leaders naturally integrate both their successes and their struggles into their narrative. Why? Because if you're a leader who only ever talks about winning, you're implicitly telling your team that making mistakes isn't safe. Sharing your struggles is the secret sauce for creating real psychological safety. This whole intersection of storytelling and happiness essentially comes down to two pillars: being and us. Being is your internal story. It's the foundation of your authenticity, knowing and owning all your chapters, even the really messy ones. And us? That's about our shared stories. Patrick Lencioni hit the nail on the head when he identified a lack of trust as the root of all team dysfunction. And how do you build trust? Through shared vulnerability. Honest, unvarnished stories met with real listening, that is the ultimate infrastructure for trust. Okay, so how do we practically fix a rigid inner narrative without just slapping on some fake toxic positivity? It comes down to a simple 4-step framework. First, just listen to your current story with zero judgment. Second, dig in and examine the hidden assumptions holding that story up. Third, actively challenge those assumptions. Look for hard evidence that proves them wrong. And finally, build a broader, more honest narrative that embraces the tough stuff right alongside the growth. And the absolutely best tool for executing those steps? Writing. Putting a difficult experience down into words physically activates your prefrontal cortex. It's a process called cognitive integration, and it basically gives structure to messy, fragmented memories. And the professional payoff here is huge. Writing out your thoughts on a tough work conflict or a recent failure has been shown to significantly improve the quality of your decision-making down the road. To really harness that power, you might want to start a weekly narrative journal. It's super practical. First, carve out a quiet moment each week. Pick whatever format works for you, pen and paper, a digital note, whatever. Then use some guiding prompts. List out 3 good things that happened, the difficulties you had to navigate, 1 core lesson you learned, and a goal for the future. Oh, and the most important part, really push yourself to assign precise, specific language to your emotions. Committing to this simple storytelling practice is a total game changer because it directly nourishes 4 dimensions of your human energy. Physically, it actually boosts your immune function and drops your stress. Emotionally, finding that precise language helps you regulate how you feel. Mentally, building a coherent narrative completely enriches your self-understanding. And spiritually, knowing exactly what you've survived and where you're headed provides this incredibly stable, rock-solid foundation of intrinsic motivation. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to really sit with this question. What story are you currently writing for yourself right now? And is it truly serving your growth? Remember, you aren't just a passive custodian of your past. You are holding the pen. So challenge your assumptions, lean into those difficult chapters, and start authoring a narrative of continuous growth. Take just a few minutes today to write it down. Honestly, you might be totally surprised by what you discover.